So I'm really excited to be here with Jennifer, and she is actually the only person standing between us and lunch, and champagne, and DJ Lady Ryan. So I just want to say that.
We'll make it quick.
But really excited. We put out the call and we asked the first partner to accept our first Accelerator for Change award, and she accepted, and we're just so very grateful. And I have a short story. So maybe about in 2007 or 2000, it was a long time ago. When I was at NYU, it was a premiere of Misrepresentation on the campus, and the auditorium was packed, and I got to be a part of a really dynamic panel talking about the importance of representation of women and how it impacts who we become, but also public policy change. If anybody knows me and our work at IWPR, I really believe in the power of narratives to shape public policy outcomes. I believe those two things are really related. And so the work that Jennifer has done in her work as a filmmaker, producer, writer has really been about making really great narrative change so we can change society. So, thank you so much. So we're going to have a brief conversation, and I'll just jump right in.
Great.
So you've been very busy in your roles as first partner, both supporting the governor's policies and acting as an advocate on a variety of issues of yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about Equal Pay California and the other initiatives that you're so passionate about?
Yes, thank you. So anyway, it's so great to be with all of you. What a glorious room of women and allies, and obviously I'm just so appreciative to you. This woman's a rock star, as we all know. So fun to have you in California. So my first initiative out of the gate was Equal Pay CA, our pledge to basically take the strongest equal pay laws in the nation and turn them into the lowest wage gap in the nation. And California most recently signed the pledge. We're the largest employer, the state of California, in the nation state, the fifth largest economy. So that's a big deal, right? That we ourselves are committed, and we've actually been transparent to date, but we officially signed the pledge, so I'm really proud of that work. But look, we all know that we have a wage gap in this country, and California still, on average, is paying women 88 cents to the dollar, African American women 59 cents, Native women 57 cents, Latina women 55 cents in California. So that's just horrific. And then mothers, we pay 70 cents. And as a working mother, I'm really angry about that. But I'm mostly angry about the wage gap and that stolen, the lost dollars. I mean, that's about $87 billion a year that California women are still losing. And we have the strongest pay laws in the nation. So Equal Pay California is really about education, workers knowing their rights. It's also about implementation, and it's about enforcement. And the governor's invested in strengthening enforcement. But as a state with about 40 million individuals, it's a lot of work. And so Equal Pay CA is something that I think is critical. I mean, once obviously it's part of a larger trajectory, and I'll talk about my moonshot later, but it is, for me, what's essential to gender equity, racial equity, and again, if we can close that pay gap sooner than later, then we're all going to benefit. Society's going to benefit because we know that women are the backbones of their families, they're the backbones of their communities, and they're such a large part of our economy. They're a majority part of our economy. And all of us in this room knew this and have known this, and it took the pandemic for everybody else to kind of wake up to this reality of how we've so devalued women and the feminine and all of the invisible work that women shoulder. And so, it's high time, and California hopes to lead the nation in closing this gap sooner than later.
Yeah, and California also has recently passed a pay data law,
yes,
which requires businesses, public businesses, to disclose their pay data. And again, we're talking about the need for a bundle of policies that will shrink that gap and do it quickly. We can't afford another 50 years.
No, we can't.
So you've been in some incredible decision-making roles. So policy advocate, but also, like we said before, filmmaker, writer, producer. And in all those roles, including public figure, what have you learned about power and how it operates in these spaces?
So, power is money, and money is power in American culture, unfortunately, and we continue to, if we're paying attention to the news, privilege the few and harm the many through the perpetuation of this patriarchal, gendered, and racial hierarchy system. And so it's my prior film to this film that's coming out this summer, The Great American Lie, really exposed this gendered hierarchy of the binary of the masculine over the feminine, hard over soft, perceived strength over weakness, and which ultimately, again, privileges the few with values that inculcate power, dominance, control, and aggression at the expense of empathy, care, and collaboration. So we need to right that ship, and in righting that ship and creating more harmony and balance, everyone benefits, in particular women of color, in particular marginalized communities. And frankly, I would argue, and you'll see this in our next film, that men will benefit as well. So it's a little frightening to me when, I studied, I lived overseas, I studied Latin American history and policy, and in some ways, I feel like coming out of this pandemic, we're becoming the countries that I studied, with the uber rich and the uber poor in California as this nation state. We've been closing that pay gap, but obviously the pandemic didn't help, or that wealth gap, forgive me, but the pandemic didn't help. So we have a lot of work to do. And again, there's so much benefit to a rising tide lifting all boats, just not the few. And we have to get that right in this country. But as long as we associate money with power, and we allow a few people to have so much power and control in this country, then I think we're doing ourselves a disservice and democracy a disservice. Right. And this isn't begrudging anyone's success. This is not begrudging anyone's success or hard-earned wealth and opportunity. It's just recognizing we live in community and we need each other to all have opportunity and all thrive.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we think about it as winners and losers.
Yeah.
And it's really not a zero-sum game.
It can't be a zero-sum game. Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah.
So even when you are thinking about, we need to shift the paradigm, we need to focus on care and empathy and value those things. Mm-hmm. How do we go about doing that? Because that is not something, because it's everywhere. It's not, it's in our institutions, it's in the media, it's the way we operate. Mm-hmm. There are clear benefits for exercising a particular kind of power in our society. And even women are told that in order to get ahead, they have to exercise a particular kind of power.
Right.
So how do we shift that? How do we do that?
I think we have to elevate care. I think we have to elevate the feminine. I think we have to elevate long-term values. And there's so many good men in leadership that are doing this. So this isn't relegated to just women. It's not relegated to just moms, although I would argue I want more mothers or maternal care-oriented folks in leadership. But it really is about valuing what we as human beings, but which historically women have brought to the table, which is a concern for, look, I worked in Latin America and Africa helping women to create little microenterprises, because we all know from the Grameen model, the Grameen Bank model, that when you put money in a woman's pocket, she invests in her children's nutrition, healthcare, education, and opportunity. One of the countries I was living in, when I was living in Botswana, the men were all investing in booze and hookers. And so it was all about putting money into these women's pockets and then giving them seats at the tables of power. So it's a paradigm shift. We have a lot to learn from older countries. I think we have a lot to learn from the Nordic countries, who have put family into the Constitution and children into the Constitution, who value the feminine and who, frankly, are not afraid of quotas, who don't back down, right? And we have to we have to be brave. I was talking to a friend about this last night. We women and our allies, we have to be brave, and we have to speak truth to power. And we have to just, demonstrate how, and I think we've had a couple wake-up calls. I think the pandemic was a wake-up call in some sense to, we have to value care, but now we actually have to do it, right? And I think the climate crisis is a wake-up call, but now we actually have to value the environment. And so it's really, I think, unfortunately, on us and our allies to be really brave and courageous and commit ourselves to being the change that we wish to see in the world, and mentoring younger generations to continue that work. It just occurred to me, I have 4 young children, and I literally was like, whoa, I'm getting old here. I'm tired. And I have a lot of energy, but I've got to instill my values in them and then empower them to use their voice and stand in their power and be those leaders that all of us need to be carrying this country forward and moving this country in the right direction, which is leaning into care, valuing the environment, and valuing that all that we have deemed feminine. And then obviously, as I know you all just heard, really enveloping and supporting our allies who have our back and who themselves are leaning into care.
Mm-hmm. I want more allies. I actually don't think we have enough. So I mean, I love, calling out the Gary and the Ton and the Dons of the world. But, frankly, we need more, especially when we think about what's stopping policy change at both the state and federal levels. But the other thing that, so I just want to say that, I'll put that on the record here. But also thinking about what you were just saying about saying it, or, articulating what it is that we really, really want. And so how do we begin to be bold in the big things that we know that would make the difference in the lives of women and girls and families? How do we put those big, bold ideas out there and not be unapologetic about those ideas? Mm-hmm. How can we do that? Because I talk to a lot of women in my work and even funders, and we know the change that needs to happen. And mm-hmm. I told this story a couple weeks ago, but I was talking to a funder who funds abortion funds. Mm. And she was saying that the model is unsustainable, continue to give money for reproductive care. And she said, but what we really need is universal health care that covers abortion care. We need to, so that we don't have to rely on philanthropy in the same way. And I said, well, if that's what we need, why don't we start from there? Why don't we imagine to get to that place, mm-hmm. what that place looks like? And so how do we do that? How do we have the radical imagination to say what we want and then go and do it and make it visible in the world?
Well, I think it's about partnership, and I think that's what you've done today and what you've always done. And I know Eve is similarly inclined. It's really about partnership, and everybody brings their strength and their circles to the table. And so it's really about working together. When you see a wrong, try to make it right. And there's a lot of apathy out there. I don't think that what's going on in the world is helping matters. I don't think the division and derision in social media is helping matters. I think it just breeds more apathy. And when there's apathy, there's hopelessness, and then there's inaction. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us to take care of ourselves mm-hmm. individually and collectively, and then commit ourselves to being brave and tackling some of these major systemic problems that we have in this country. And to your point, that starts with we didn't create these structures because we weren't empowered. None of us were born. But we don't have to be a part of it. We don't have to continue to uplift these structures that reinforce inequity. Mm-hmm. And so it's just about speaking our truth, making sure we have seats at the tables of power. Look, I'm one person, mm-hmm. But even in government, sometimes, especially around, campaign culture, I have to insert myself in the room every once in a while. I'd be like, you knuckleheads, I got my husband's back, and stop being so, you're just perpetuating patriarchy, and that's not who my husband is. And so I share that because I think that you got to assert yourself, not be afraid to be the only person in a room, but bring allies in to partner with them, and really not be afraid to be like, this is wrong. For example, different subject matter, but I have a huge issue with how technology is addicting our kids' hearts and minds and brains. And I'm not going to be complicit. And these companies were founded in California. They were born in California. We have a responsibility. And so, I might have to be creative to try and move the needle forward, and, find different partnerships and try and inspire other people to do the work that they need to do to, so it's not just all on me. But again, it's just about being creative and not giving up, and you got to take care of yourself in the process, and really, build strong partnerships.
Strong partnerships, be brave, and self-care.
Yes.
This is like
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yes.
That's what we're up to.
I love that.
So I just want to shift gears and talk about your filmmaking, and talk a little bit about, again, your career, but why you think it's important to make films like The Hunting Ground, Eve's new film, Fair Play, Misrepresentation. What do you think that does for these kinds of conversations?
So misrepresentation was sort of born out of me having been to Stanford Business School and lived and worked in Africa and Latin America with indigenous communities, and realizing that the entertainment community wasn't representing powerful women in the light that I thought women were powerful. And in fact, the industry and media, broadly speaking, at the time was, devaluing, disrespecting, and demeaning women and girls. And so there was a problem. No one wanted to make the documentary. I thought I was just like a producer that could find funding and pull together a team, and didn't realize that I could actually be a director. I ended up having to direct it because everyone was too scared that they would never find work again if they directed Misrepresentation. And so I made Misrepresentation and then launched the Representation Project because there was so much demand for ongoing conversation and education and activism around the themes of misrepresentation. And then having launched the Representation Project, we knew that we had to make the compatible film, The Mask You Live In, looking at how gender stereotypes were harming boys and men, and really acknowledging the boy crisis in America, and how, again, it wasn't just harming boys and men, but our society at large. And then The Great American Lie came about because I wanted to dive deeper into the intersection of gender, race, and class. And we pivoted a bit with that film after the 2016 election. And then The Hunting Ground, The Invisible War. Again, this is just about using the medium of film to awaken consciousness, shift attitudes and behaviors, and then ultimately transform culture. Because I'm a firm believer that cultural change and policy change, they go hand in hand. You need them both. And I suppose that's why it's really, I feel very grateful to have this opportunity right now as first partner to, oftentimes behind the scenes and subtly and quietly, but try to champion and influence policy while simultaneously continuing the work of organizations like the Representation Project, but also just my first partner's work, which is really about cultural change.
Amazing. That's amazing. And like I said, again, the fear of picking up a camera to do the work that's not being done, and not being fearful of what might come, but understanding the importance of the overall project to our well-being. So
honestly, if all of us in this room commit to doing one brave thing a day or a week, oh my gosh, we will accelerate change that much faster. And I know you all are change agents. I know you're all super brave. I know you're committed to this work. But if we just push ourselves a little bit further, I mean, imagine what's possible. And we bring that male ally along with us.
I love you keep saying that. I love it. I mean, I'm here for it. So the Power Plus Summit is focused on big ideas for accelerating women's power and influence in this country. So one of the things, as a side note, when we were thinking about the summit, we wanted a space, or to create a space where women could be the auteurs, I guess, of big ideas. There's a lot of spaces created for big ideas, TED, Aspen ideas, but it's mainly men and a few women sprinkled in. And so what would it be like if we were putting forth the big ideas, the solutions, the strategies, the innovation? What would change if we were catapulting those ideas? So what is your big idea? What is your moonshot?
So my moonshot is 50-50 representation at the in all levels, but especially the highest offices of business and government across the country, of moms. And again, this is not to say anything about anyone else, but I think that would just completely shift the conversation. Don't think we'd have all the wars that we have in the world, or we didn't get involved in them. I don't think we would have this income inequity and wealth inequity that we have. I know for sure the climate would be in a better place. I know for sure our health would be in a better place, and we wouldn't all be getting sick off of the food we eat and that which we consume, the air we breathe. So I feel like we need more moms in leadership, and that will then close the wage gap. It will ensure that we have more childcare and family-friendly policies. And it's exciting to me. I think it's possible. And again, you can be a mom in a different way. I'm not trying to say you have to birth that child, but there's like a maternal value system that is missing. And increasingly, and I would argue my husband's one of those, there's that paternal leadership value system that we're seeing more and more of, but it's got to move quicker and start shifting culture and policy in business and government at a much higher rate. So I want to see, because I think all the other policies follow suit. And so I'm really excited about it.
So 50-50 representation, state, federal, local,
business and government.
Everywhere. California has a really great policy on the books now around representation in boards.
Yep.
So 50-50, and you know what? Let me just tell you something. We're not going to get there by voting, by the way. So I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be mandated.
Yeah.
We're going to have to change the laws. Like it's going to.
Yeah. And
I'm just saying.
I'm really proud of, so we launched, when I became first partner, Olivia Morgan and I launched the California Partners Project as C4 to basically, to focus again on my first partner's work of gender equity and child well-being, to basically be sort of the research and amplification arm of, again, a focus on child well-being, which is increasingly focused on mental health, and then gender equity. But the gender equity piece that we plugged into was SB 826, which looked at women's representation, diverse women's representation increasingly on public company boards, knowing that these are very powerful, influential corporations where if we could prove, which we're doing and have done, the value of women having seats in those decision-making positions, that ultimately we could influence positive change across the board, and that there could be more of a trickle down into other boards and then companies across the board. So it's been a really interesting process to track, and what we found is that in 2021, there were over 50% women, more women than men for the first time in history, added to the board because of the legislation and because of what we've been driving narrative-wise, right, to basically show companies how easy it is to bring women, in particular diverse women, onto their boards. We still have shortcomings with a state that is almost 20% represented by Latinas. We only have 1% Latinas on our public company board, so we have a lot of work to do, but we're committed to continuing to amplify those stories and make processes available. We have a Stanford playbook coming out shortly that basically gives companies no excuse. And I'm really, really excited about that because I think it could transform what happens across industries, across the country. We like to say, as California goes, so can go the country.
It's fantastic. So our time is up. I just want to thank you so much for accepting our first ever Accelerator for Change. This is how new it is. Award here at the Power Plus Summit, and thank you for all the work that you do, both at the policy level, but also at the narrative change level, because we really need both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole, so much. Oh my goodness. Yeah, thank you. Oh, this is so nice. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Aw. This is partnership, right? We're all in this together, and so this means so much to me and all the folks that I partner with, because none of us can do this on our own, and so I'm just so moved and adore you and Eve for connecting us, and adore Eve, and just know that I know you get to hear from Eve tomorrow, and I can't wait for her to share a little bit about Fair Play. This woman and Eve are magical in the documentary that's coming out this summer, but that really shines a light on all the invisible paid and unpaid labor that women have shouldered historically and how we can move the needle forward. So again, thank you for this, and onwards to partnership and accelerating change. Thank you.